Hello and welcome. You have found Denver's monthly real estate podcast. This is Ricky.Schoonover, your local realtor and host of today's show. You are listening to the Denver Homes Market Report. We are now a little more than halfway into our third season. This is our 7th podcast for this current third season. Before we get into today's topic, let's quickly recap in case you missed last month. The market is shifting. The market has actually been shifting for a few months now. In fact, the market went crazy back, maybe like year 2021 towards the end of it, got a little crazy, and then even more nuts once we started getting into 2022. And then bam, the Feds started raising their benchmark rates. Now, these rates are not directly tied to mortgage rates. However, when the Feds raise their benchmark rates, inevitably, the higher cost of borrowing money finds its way into all aspects of our economy when it comes to us consumers wanting to borrow other people's money. Whether that be to make a big purchase, like a home, car, boat, or RV, or even just our month-to-month credit card payments. Virtually every aspect of borrowing money is getting more expensive to do so with each rate hike. This actually brings me to one of my points for today's podcast. I'm sure you keep seeing these headlines or maybe these social media posts where they take the same house, but last year, and show you they paid $600,000 and they had a 3% interest rate. And then they show you a house being bought today, the same $600,000 house, but they give you a 7% interest rate. And then you say, wow, that home costs, over $2,600 now, where it only cost $22,000, last year. And yes, that's true. There's no way around the fact that when you're paying 3%, you will pay less in interest than someone who's locking in a rate at 7%. However, this is a very simplistic and, dare I say, sensationalistic view. Headlines are just that. They are created to grab your attention. However, the house that someone bought back in the days when the rates were around 3%, and even then, first and foremost, not everyone timed it just right and got 3%. Not everyone's credit scores, along with credit history and their debt-to-income ratios, not all of them fell under the highest credit rating where they can actually qualify for those really great 3% rates. Some did a little better than 3%. Most did not. Most ended up locking in somewhere between the mid-3s to the mid-4 range. But for the sake of today's arguments, let's just say that they all locked in at 3%. Okay, so that house last year, someone bought it for $600,000 and they have a payment. It's just over $2,000 a month. First and foremost, they had to put down 20% or likely put down 20%. So that's $120,000 if they got that best rate. And then they are also paying their taxes based off of the $600,000. Of course, you can petition the city and sometimes get them to reduce your taxes, but most people don't bother. Okay, so if we were to take the same house at $600,000 today and run the exact same numbers, sure, your payment would be somewhere around $3,000 a month versus the same house you bought at 3% for a little over $2,000 a month. However, that's just not a real-world comparison. There are several reasons I want to point out to you today, and I know it's a lot of numbers thrown at you, so I'm going to keep it simple. Here's reason number one. The house that someone bought last year, they likely had to pay thousands of dollars over the asking price to even get the house. They had to waive all sorts of inspections or at least not ask for any repairs. The demand was so sky high that sellers would drop a buyer right away and just move on to another buyer because they knew there were very motivated buyers just waiting for that house to fall out of contract. So the same house that last year, if you could even get your foot in the door, much less win the bidding wars, well, those days are gone. No longer will the house hit the market on Friday and then have 16 offers all over asking price by Monday. So now you may actually get to spend some time in the house, really making sure it feels right, and then really looking at those inspection reports and not being afraid to ask the seller to address, the major issues. If you see a house listed at $600,000, you can actually offer less. Imagine that, offering less than the list price, not $100,000 over the asking price. So that home that someone paid $600,000 for last year and got that 3% rate, you very well may be able to negotiate a deal for that same house at $500,000 today. Then comes the insurance and taxes, which are all calculated using, in part, the purchase price. So now you're saving money on your insurance, and you're saving money on your taxes, and you paid $100,000 less than the person that bought last year. So do not buy into the fact or blindly follow these headlines. The $600,000 house last year is now a $500,000 house. Yes, the interest rates are around 7%, but guess what? Many sellers are now offering buyers money at close, sometimes substantial amounts like $10,000, where you can then use that money to buy down your rate. You pay your lender up front and they give you a better rate. And you may very well end up with a rate a full percentage point lower than what the going market rate is. So you're getting your house today for cheaper, better incentives, more time to actually shop for your home, and then spend some time with your future home before you actually write the offer. More leverage when it comes to home inspections, cheaper taxes, save money on insurance. Guess what? You're the smart buyer who waited for the right time for you. You're not trying to time the market. You are buying now when you have all these tools in your tool belt to use to buy the right home at the right time for you. All things considered, sure, your payment is a couple of $100 higher on your $500,000 home, which somebody last year paid $600,000 for. So let that sink in. Sure, your payments say $200 higher, but the interest rates will come down, and they're probably going to come down within the next 2 years. So you pay your $500,000 instead of $600,000. Then you pay an extra $200 a month for approximately 2 years. That's going to be less than $5,000 total. And then you refinance. So who was the smarter buyer? The person who locked in at 3% for 30 years on a $600,000 home, or the buyer who buys now at a substantial discount and then refinances in a couple of years? You have to look at the big picture. And remember, the feds are raising the rates to stem inflation. It will take hold. It's just a matter of time. And as fast as they raise the rates, they will start to ease them. And in a year or two, we're going to be back down to rates around the 5.5% range. That's at least my guess. So at that time, if it makes sense, you go ahead and refinance. Or heck, by then, the values have probably started going back up again, and you very well may be ready to sell and then move up to your next home. You still think it's a terrible time to buy a house? Give me a call. I'm serious. Call me right now, 720-688-5110, and let's set up your appointment so we can really dive into this together, and I will show you why now might be a great time for some to buy a home. Many of you already know this, but in the mid-2000s, I bought multiple homes. Then the market crashed, and it was one of the best things to ever happen for me. It all worked out, and I got amazing low rates because I took a risk. I did those 5-1 ARMs where they lock the rate for just 5 years, and then after that 5th year, they adjust. Well, by that time, the market had crashed, and so did the rates. So I got these crazy low rates, and then the market started coming back, and the value started going up, and I sold off each one of those homes, and I made a nice profit off of each one of them. So don't buy into those folks that say, well, I'm not buying a house now because the market's going down. Well, guess what? Those folks didn't buy a house last year when the market was going up either. The bottom line is there is always trade-offs, and there are always risks involved when buying or investing in anything, whether it be real estate or stocks or anything else. Real estate does tend to be a very good investment over time. There is and always has been this variable dynamic that people tend to only focus on one thing. Like right now, someone might be focused on the interest rates, and that's why they cannot buy a house. But guess what? 6 months ago, it was the bidding wars. They did not want to get in a bidding war at that time, so that was keeping them from buying. And then it was the prices were too high, so they didn't want to buy it then. And then the house was not in good condition, so they didn't want to buy it then. And then they didn't buy the house because, fill in the blank. There's always going to be a reason for folks to point to as the reason they cannot make a move in their lives. So focus on the points that I made above. That, it might make the perfect time for you to become a homeowner. More selections, more time to make a proper decision, more incentives from the sellers, more motivated sellers, lower taxes, lower insurance premiums, buy your interest rate down using the seller's money, lower down payments, more leverage when it comes to the home inspections and getting those repairs done, and then getting the home for $500,000 that someone paid $600,000 for last year. So tell me again why now is not a great time for you to buy a house. Okay, well, that was a whole bunch of stuff for buyers to consider in this market. There are plenty of reasons that this may be the perfect market for you. We are not technically in a buyer's market yet, nor are we in a seller's market by any means. There are deals to be had on both sides, as long as you have a local experienced realtor kind of helping you guide through. So we spent some time today talking to buyers who may be waiting for the time that feels right for them. So let's also speak to our potential sellers out there. Okay, so you didn't jump in last year when you likely could have had multiple offers all above your asking price on your first weekend. With interest rates now at 7%, you may have many more homes to compete with, more inventory. So did you miss the boat altogether? No, of course not. It is true. Didn't take advantage of what was probably the best seller's market I've seen. Doesn't mean you missed out altogether. I mean, I never advocate for timing the market anyways. When folks do that, if you look at the statistics, there are usually more losers than winners. So to answer your question, Ricky, is it a good time for me to sell my house? I'm getting this one a lot lately, and my answer is it really depends on what you and your goals are and how the timing works out for you in your life. Not timing the market, but timing for you in your life. I can definitively tell you, you will not get the same money now while interest rates are at 7% as you would have when they were at 3%. I mean, you don't need any realtor experience to tell you that. However, now may be the time for you based on many other factors going on in your life. Let me give you a couple prime examples. I have a client. She owns a loft, which is valued near $1 million in today's market. Probably could have got 1.1 a short time ago, and now probably likely closer to about 800 to 900,000. So she doesn't owe anything on the home, and her plan last year was to sell the loft and then buy a duplex where she could live in one unit and then rent the other unit out. So now she is, not likely to get over $1 million for her loft, but on the flip side, do you know how many duplexes are in the MLS that are less than 700,000? There are 66 multi-unit properties, meaning you're buying multiple units. You're at least 2 units, maybe even 3 or 4, where you can live in one unit and then rent out the others. So my client's not going to get the 1.1 million for her loft, but so what? She did not have 66 properties as an option last year. Heck, she would have been lucky to find 6 properties, let alone 66. And then with the bidding wars and the lack of inventory, the demand was so high, she would have not had much time for inspections before she wrote her offer, and then probably not get much help with, getting the repairs done. So now her reality is she'll make less on her sale, but she's also going to pay less on her new multi-unit. And instead of one loft where she really had no way to rent it out while she lived in it, now she can live in one unit and rent out the other unit or units and make some, rental income off of it. So there you go. That's just one shining example where it very well makes sense for her to take advantage of the increased inventory of today. I have another client, who was very specific as to where they wanted to live. They wanted a home that was just very close to the school where the children went. And so we found this home, and it made sense for them to go ahead and buy that home and then go back and sell their old home. The inventory just wasn't there last year, and this home fits their needs, and it was where they wanted to live. And then I have another client. She recently, unfortunately, lost her parents, and this home was sitting there for a while. It was in disrepair, and, she needed to sell it in order to settle the estate. And it just didn't make sense to renovate the property and then rent it out and then having to manage it and then trying to pay the family heirs each month and all that. It was just best to sell the home, split the proceeds, and everyone could move on with their lives. So it's not yet a buyer's market. The seller's market's gone, and that's not likely coming back, at least for a few years. So is it time to sell? Maybe. Give me a call. Let's discuss your specifics and see if we can determine if now is the right time for you. Again, my phone number is 720-688-5110. All right, well, we spoke to our buyers out there. We spoke to my sellers out there. I want to thank you all for tuning into my podcast. I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I love producing the show. This is going to bring today's show to a close. This is, once again, Ricky Schoonover of Mo Denver Real Estate. Please visit my website, denverhomesmarket.com. And I once again thank you for listening to the Denver Homes Market Report. If you're considering buying or selling your home or just want to get some straight answers, give me a call. 720-688-5110. I'll see you next month.